Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap the return of Marcelo Garcia on One Championship versus Masakazu Imanari. Talk about some fantastic upcoming matchups and some things that got announced this week. We are also going to recap Karate Combat 52 Pit Submission Series 11 that had a really fun matchup on it, as well as run through some of the highlights of the IBJJF European Championships for 2025, the first IBJJF major of the year. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, and the co-host,
Miranda.
How you doing, Miranda?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I said last week that the audio was going to be better this week. I apologize if there are any issues. Who would have known that it takes much longer to rebuild an entire podcast studio than a couple weeks?
Well, you never know. You never know exactly what's going to happen.
I thought I knew, and I was wrong. Again, apologies for the audio. Hopefully, I'm able to kind of do some editing and make it sound pretty good. But again, it'll be returned to normal in a couple of weeks in the new space that is taking longer to build than I had forecasted initially.
It happens.
But we have some phenomenal matchups to talk about this week. I want to start with, let's start with news. We always start with news. Wagner Hocher was in the hospital this week with heart failure. He looks like he's been released and he's home. Again, Wagner is one of my favorite guys to watch. He is my wife's favorite guy to watch.
Yeah.
So that kind of it sucks to hear that from a guy that we've covered for years. I've interviewed Wagner. Wagner had me take a picture of him and his family after I interviewed him, ADCC 2019.
That's
he was like,
funny.
hey, make a photo. He goes, hey, you did an interview with me.
Yeah.
Here, can you get this picture of my family? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, Wagner, we'll do that. And
yeah.
So I like Wagner. He's been a really fun athlete to cover. He's home. Hopefully it's a one-off thing and it's not an ongoing thing. But love your family. Take care of your family.
It also
and best of wishes to everyone.
It also happens when you take certain drugs for long periods of time.
Potentially as well.
Your heart doesn't. Potentially, he's admitted to it.
Yeah, he's talking about being on testosterone and other
Yeah.
things when that everything came out a couple years ago, and we can you can point to whatever.
Yeah.
Regardless, I like Wagner. He's been really fun to watch over the years, and I wish all of the best. Just younger athletes that are in the sport. Just be careful with what you decide to do with your body, because man, sometimes it's really tough.
Yeah.
Best of wishes to Wagner. That's been fun to cover for years and years. Hope he remains healthy. Other things coming up. Let's do the events coming up, because we have some really fun matchups to talk about this week. Helena Crevar is back on Fight to Win. She goes against Tara Lewis. Someone you actually competed against.
Tiara Lewis. I actually never went against Tiara. She was in our house. She did Karjitsu with us. She was in the same house as me. She went against the other girl. Yeah, we never went against each other.
Okay,
but anyway, she's a brown belt from Hunter Colvin's gym. And,
brothers. Or not, he's not brothers.
Brothers,
The other one, that Hunter's is now originally brothers.
Yeah. Outside of Tulsa.
Yep.
So she trains with them. She's brown belt. Real tough.
Mm-hmm.
So
we'll talk about that matchup here probably at the end.
Yeah.
After we do everything, we get into the preview section, but it got announced this week, and I was like, ooh, Helena's back on Fight to Win for a brown belt title, which I still kind of laugh about that, but we'll get more into that in a minute here.
Well, I think she won Euros at brown belt.
Did she win as well this year?
I believe so. Huh. The picture I saw was her on a podium.
That would not surprise me in the slightest. You place second at ADCC, you're probably going to win most of the majors that you run up against. Other things that got announced this week, we have Gabriel Souza versus Johnny Grippo on One Championship. This one is going to be really, really fun. It's a rematch. I forget what the record of these two guys are. It's not happening this week. We'll preview it on next week's show when we do all the previews for Who's Number 126. We are getting more and more matchups. She should win.
Yep.
Crevar won her division. Is that juvenile?
Nope.
It's adult.
Brown belt's adult.
Okay, cool.
Yep, adult brown belt.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I haven't got a chance to see her matches yet, but I will definitely go back and look. Who's number 126? We finally have more matchups.
Oh, no, that's Dallas Open. So it wasn't Euro. She did Dallas Open, but it was the same weekend.
Okay. Same weekend.
My bad. Dallas Open, she won.
Well,
but all the IBJJFs are combining in my head.
They all kind of blend together eventually. Yeah. Who's number 126 got announced this week, or not a week. We're getting more matchups this week. We haven't talked about it yet. We have a rematch between J-Rod and Ronaldo Jr. We have Roberto Jimenez versus Elder Cruz. We have Rafael Geddes versus Paige Yvette. That'd be fun. We have Tynan Dalport versus Renee Souza. Very curious if that matchup happens, given the state of Tynan's hand. We will talk about that when we get into European championships.
Why wouldn't he?
Because he has a clearly broken hand.
But he did Euros.
He won Euros. He beat Andy Marsaki.
But it's one match.
And but it's Nogi, and maybe Nogi's actually better for your hand.
You don't have to grip as much.
I don't know. I
mean, think about it.
We'll talk about this probably in more depth next week because it's, again, that'll be the preview we do for next week's show. Will be that. But he put out of the crown.
Yeah.
And he broke his hand. So, like, he
put it out before, after... it's been out for a long time that his hand is broken.
Man. This is how you end up with like long career-defining injuries. Pull out, man. Pull out. I want to see him healed up. I don't want to see him win or lose, like diminished as an athlete. We also have Slather versus Saints. We have Lucas Lira versus Ryan Aiken. I think that's a rematch as well. That'll be super fun. And Diego Pato versus Keith Krikorian.
Yep.
Super stack card. Honestly, one of the better cards that Who's Number One's put together in a little bit here. All those are really, really fun matchups. Should be action-packed and like a lot of fun. Polaris 31 is coming out with the squads. That is happening next month on the 8th. We'll probably also preview that next week's show. And then up in March, we have Fight Pass Invitational. We have Brianna St. Marie versus Elizabeth Clay. We have Maggie Grandotti versus Helena Crevar. Cassia Mora versus Talita Alencar. And that main evented by Fionn Davies versus...
I think, and
Adele,
I could be wrong with this, but I think Nicky Rod is on this card, but he hasn't been announced yet.
Because right now I'm curious, these are all women that have been announced for the Fight Pass Invitational, which I love.
They're the only ones that I found when I went to look at who was announced that were really.
But we might have that thing where we see the same font between Who's Number One and Fight Pass Invitational and get confused.
No, I go to the UFC
Fight Pass
Instagram. Like Instagram account. Instagram accounts are where I go for everything. But they're the only matches that they've announced. Okay. But he's kind of hinted at the fact that he's on the card.
I would love to see a women only card. That would be phenomenal. They just pick all like the hardest hitting women in the sport and just do a female super fight card. That would be wild. Like kind of what Medusa does. Like just pick all the best ladies in the world, and Fight Pass has the money to get them all. Put them all on the same card and do like highlight women's jiu-jitsu. That would be phenomenal. Again, you have, 8 of the top women in the world right now as far as like the name and the status. Like just keep going with it. Pull the whole thing in. This is already a phenomenal card for the women, and it should be headlined by Fionn and Adele.
Yeah.
I think Nicky Rod might be on the card. You said he might main event it, but again, you stack them at the top, you get the eyes on it, and then you put the eyes on women's jiu-jitsu, and that would be phenomenal. So that's all I got for previews, Miranda.
Polaris also is on the 8th of February, and it's like Europe versus the United States, and it's a squads event.
Yeah, and that's one Keith's on.
Yeah, and what's it called? It's also on Helena Crevar, I think, is also on that card.
Yeah, she has a European exclusive contract with Polaris as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that are in a lot of matches coming up very soon.
We're finally coming out of the lull that is usually end of January, and now back into the regular kind of cycle of big matchups for the year. So let's move into it. The thing that I'm most excited to talk about this week, the return of Marcelo Garcia after 14 years?
They said 13.
13. Okay, so
that's what
13
Yeah,
years
that's what they kept on saying
of not competing.
At least on the telecast.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it doesn't
look like anything changed. He looks like maybe a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But even then, I think we had weights. Marcello weighed in, significantly heavier than Imanari, which we knew, but significant by 15 pounds?
Yeah, something like that.
We knew he would be bigger. Marcello is the bigger guy.
But Marcello was a lot more jacked than I expected him to be. I saw it and I sent it around to the group and I'm like, dude, did you guys...
posted the picture of Marcello's weigh and you're like, did you know he's that jacked?
I was like, did you know he looked like that? Because I don't know. Marcello isn't the type of individual that goes around shirtless. So you don't really know, and then you see it and you're like, oh, especially because he's said for years he doesn't lift. He scrunches people when he rolls. I listened to a whole podcast with him talking to Emily Kwan, yeah, and he was talking about how if you're if you're not very good in his gym, like he'll get a position on you and then he'll like squeeze his legs on you and like he'll do his reps on you. Yeah. And you're like a human weight to him, basically.
I think it's really funny. So we'll bring this up now because we're talking about Marcello.
Yeah.
We have not had a chance on this show since COVID. Those episodes will recap some of his matches to talk about him. Marcello is the guy that gets brought up. If anyone, like, I didn't lift for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And I did it because I don't really like lifting, not because I thought I was Marcello. But I
1000% say that.
The argument always is, well, Marcello doesn't lift, and it goes, yeah, man, you're not Marcello. That's always my favorite counter for anyone's like, well, Marcello doesn't lift. Yeah, man, you're not Marcello. Like, he's the only guy that doesn't lift because he's Marcelo Garcia. We're not that guy.
Yeah.
You know who else doesn't lift? Nobody else. Everyone else lifts. Every other world champion dude lifts. Marcelo's the only guy because he's Marcello.
She was joking that she's friends with his wife, and they make jokes about him being like a mutant because of just the way he like his body is, and the way he behaves, and the way he like heals and doesn't get injured, and just
Marcelo's a special dude. Yeah. And it was awesome to see him return. Let's talk about the technique here.
Okay.
Because we're both going to go off on like Marcelo Garcia stories for the entire podcast, which I would love, but let's try to bring it back into technique. You kind of called it a little bit last week where you're like, Marcello is going to either arm drag and take down, inside trip. And you just sort of like shot a single leg.
Yeah.
Him and Imanari, kind of backed Imanari up to the fence, and Imanari was like, I'm not sure what you're going to do.
And then he went, I'm going to grab your leg.
And he went, I'm going to bend over. I'm going to do a bent over single. So what I love about jiu-jitsu is whenever you talk about stand up for jiu-jitsu, like in quotes here, good stand up.
Yeah.
And like good wrestling. It's like, hey man, wrestling is not jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
These two guys are some of the top guys in the world. And Marcelo Garcia hit a bent over single.
Well, he did like the two hands to the wrist, and then I'm going to put your wrist on your leg and grab your leg.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it is.
It works in jiu-jitsu.
It's good jiu-jitsu wrestling. It works for jiu-jitsu. But there was no shot. It was like
we talked about years ago in ADCC.
But MMA,
Hulk does a bent over shot.
But MMA is the same way.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey man, it's functional for the sport you do. Yeah. If you go up against a D1 wrestler, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But guess what? We do jiu-jitsu, and a super high level match totally works pretty effectively here. I'm not using this as like an excuse to not work my wrestling, but you know, Marcelo Garcia can get away with it.
Well, you don't have to lift either because Marcello doesn't lift.
I started lifting again, and I'm sore. I've started lifting after like 7 years, and I'm like so sore. It's terrible. Marcello then gets Imanari down. He sits in Imanari's guard.
He passes
half guard.
He almost completely passes the guard very quickly, but then Imanari grabs a lockdown on the leg.
And Imanari kind of kept going to this lockdown while he was in half guard. Marcello pretty much glues himself chest to chest for a minute here on Imanari and slowly works like good top pressure, good shoulder pressure on the same side of Imanari. Imanari is pretty dexterous with his feet and just in general. You picked up something. We just rewatched this before the show. You picked up something and showed me something really interesting. Marcelo Garcia deals with the lockdown in a really interesting way. He passes it sort of normally, but Marcelo Garcia like pummels his feet, his opposite foot, like the foot that's not trapped in the lockdown, underneath, and he keeps kicking off the heel of Imanari's lower leg lockdown.
Which is different because I remember Big J taught us in one of the seminars I did with him. He taught it, but he taught it like the same thing, but over the top, not under.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to break the lock with your other foot, but he taught like on top.
Which is traditionally kind of how you deal with that.
Because that way you kind of keep your knees apart and balanced, and so that you don't get swept as you're trying to, do this.
So we were watching this and I was thinking, I was like, okay, Marcello can do this. Like, again, you kind of always have to go, well, it is Marcello.
Yeah.
And I hate having to break down technique like that because you're like, I mean... It was like, oh, it's Huffman. It's like, okay, I mean, he can do some things that the rest of us can't do. It was really interesting to watch Marcello deal with the lockdown this way because as you were watching him do this, the upper end of his shoulders is really pressing Imanari down. So Imanari can't like really bridge towards him at all while he's doing this, while he's breaking the lockdown this way. Imanari consistently, I think 3 times, gets back into the lockdown. Marcelo Garcia kind of deals with it in the same way. And then the thing that you showed me that was really interesting is you're like, okay, he's going to come back into the half guard here because Marcelo passes. Yeah. And then Imanari is able to get his leg back in. And as Imanari pulls his leg back in and goes for the lockdown, you tell me, you can break it down. You picked up something really, really interesting here.
Yeah, Marcello goes like knee down to the mat and like toes up to the sky. Rather
like
than
foot to butt almost.
Yeah, and that way, when Imanari goes to grab his lockdown again, there's no leg to grab onto.
It was not the wildest. It was the wildest technique I saw on the weekend, and I watched a bunch of Euros. Yeah. But it was to have Marcello basically like walk his leg back into Imanari's half guard, anticipate the lockdown, but have his foot next to his butt, like so pinned up that Imanari goes to pull the lockdown and he can't.
And he literally just passes it immediately.
And then Marcelo goes like, oh, cool, I've countered. You're going to lock down. I'm going to get in front of it by not letting my leg be there because my leg be super high. You're going to miss the cross of my leg. So now I'm functionally in like a open half guard and I'm just going to cut over to the top. Yeah. It was like, that was dirt. That's an invisible jiu-jitsu where it's like, oh, he's just not there. Yeah. You're like, he just knew what you were going to do. He got ahead of it with like an odd decision that most people aren't going to make. They're going to like anticipate it and try to get their knee up and then pass through it. Marcello just went, no, I'm just not going to have my leg there for you to grab it. And then once you move, I'm going to then counter you. And
he's so flattened out, he really doesn't know that Marcello has done that.
Yeah, because he can't see. You know what I mean? He can't really feel.
Yeah, he can't see what's happening. So he goes and it's just the leg isn't there.
It was just.
It's that black belt magic.
Yeah, but that's not even black belt magic. Just like. You are so, maybe astute is the right word here, to know that that's going to come and to know like, cool, I'm going to pull out this kind of niche technique that you don't see very often to counter, like, because the lockdown nowadays is somewhat a niche position. You don't see it played a ton. A lot of guys don't want to play a lockdown half guard. It's just not super common. Marcello was of an era where like it was more common.
Well, unless they're wanting you to not pass. The whole point of the lockdown is to kind of stretch you out and not
slow down the passing, which makes sense. But it was just such a neat counter to see Marcelo Garcia pull off. I was like, oh, look at that. I've not seen that. I can't think of another match where I have seen that. Makes sense. But it was like I can't think of all the matches we've broken down, all the tape and all the footage I've watched over all the years. I can't think of another match where I've seen someone elect to counter the lockdown like that. I was like, that was neat. It was just super unique technique. And then Marcello kind of does what Marcelo Garcia does. He passes to mount, and he just kind of grinds. And then we get into the finishing sequences here. And so Marcello goes up. He gets the traditional head and arm grip from mount that you would get. And Imanari is a little bit high on his own neck, on his own face with his arm up. So the choking arm, generally speaking, if you're going to head and arm someone from mount, you need their arm to be across their neck so that it starts to choke them. It's on their face. It's a little harder. We watched this, and we watched Marcello get nice and high, and then he switches to like a double under grip under Imanari, and then, okay, cool, he's going to go to north-south. He's going to go to a head and arm choke. And we initially watched him kind of squeeze and went, I'm not sure if he's actually looking to finish this or not. He might just be looking to kind of like make Imanari a little tired, but keeping his hands above his head. And then you see Marcello make the switch off and like actually like push down and go for the head and arm choke. Imanari defends it and goes, okay, he's not gonna finish Imanari with the head and arm choke. Do you have anything else for that defense there, or for like Marcello moving through the positions?
No.
And then Marcello goes north-south, which is like, okay, cool. Like Marcello's going to look for a north-south choke. The way that Marcello, and you might actually be able to explain it better than I can, because we were talking on the pre-show, you had a good example of it. The way that Marcello positions his hands underneath Imanari, because he hits Imanari with what is an arm-in north-south choke. Yeah. Not a common choke. If there's ever a guy to do it, it's Jeff Monson and Marcelo Garcia. Yeah. But the way that he said he
got it from Damian Maia.
Which makes sense as well, because Damian Maia is another guy that's got he's a squeeze artist. Yeah. Like the guys that have like a special, Damian's pretty long and has a phenomenal squeeze, and has always had a phenomenal squeeze. And they trained him and Marcello trained a ton together back in the day. The grips that he uses here were really interesting. And you picked up something with his hand placement, like how he likes to put his hands under his body.
He likes to put his palm to the mat and his hands together, which, I don't know, I never would have thought to be like palm down on the floor.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're gonna basically like press your shoulder into their neck as you have your hand down and kind of like compress them into your shoulder. But for whatever reason, I would have always thought it would have been like, a gable grip or some kind of
like an S grip or a pinch grip. You use something else, but he does that initially.
Yeah.
And then you see him kind of like bear down on the choke. Look for like, hey, if you're going to give it to me, I'm going to take it here. Yeah. And then you see him go like complete under wrap of the body, almost like he's going to do like a darce from the top. And that's kind of the grip he uses to almost finish this, is he kind of goes like darce choke grip here, which is a really uncommon grip for people to use for this choke.
He has an entire instructional on the north-south choke.
It's a good instructional.
Because I saw part of it. Part of it is on YouTube with Bernardo. Mm-hmm. And that's where I figured out a lot of this stuff, because I was like, I mean, you could watch it and you could kind of understand what's going on, but I was like, I don't know why, because I've never been taught to do one with an arm in, ever. I was always like, you have the head and then you just sink your hips back.
The arm in choke is like the one. I have a couple things in our association that like I get brought in to teach.
Yeah.
And like one of them is like the guillotine. I have a couple of neat knee bars that I teach that I'm fairly confident in that. And then I always get brought in for north-south choke, because I watched so much Jeff Monson in instructionals and just beat my head into the choke to like, I'm going to figure this out. And Jeff Monson uses a really weird like X choke grip from the back where his forearms are together as he finishes the choke. Go watch Jeff Monson do it. It is the only time you will ever see this grip used. And I can fairly, on a mat setting from teaching it, can explain it fairly well. And it's just a weird grip. The arm in north-south choke is something that like I have hit a couple of times ever as like a happenstance where like you try for it and occasionally you get it on like a lower belt. To hit it on a black belt like Imanari in the way that Marcello does it, I don't even understand the mechanism that well. It looks like he essentially does a regular north-south choke, but the arm is up high enough where then he can squeeze the other lat down in order to finish the choke and belly down and base out for the choke. Yeah,
I think it's just he drops his shoulder. Like it's top of the hand to like his shoulder with his, in, and then you have the arm there at the same time. So it's basically your same head and arm choke that you get from mount, just upside down.
Yeah. It's
basically the same exact thing.
But
I've never seen it actually done that way, which is the wild part of the whole
thing. It's like we see two techniques in the same martial art. Like this is okay, for people that were not around during Marcello's like run, which was me, I was around during Marcello's run, and I haven't had a chance or haven't gone back and watched all the Marcello footage. This is why everyone is so excited about Marcelo Garcia, because we have 6 new minutes of tape on him. Yeah. And in this match, we have 2 moves that are like, oh, that's a new. Like, I haven't seen that done like that before. Oh, that's a weird. Like, it is very rare that you have an athlete like Marcello that in a match, we haven't seen him compete in 13 years, will have multiple things where it's like, that's really a unique way to do that in the same match. Yeah. And that was every Marcello match back in the day. I was like, oh, look at that. That's neat. That's unique. That's really nifty. It's just wild.
I think he said he wants Aoki next. Was that who it said?
Shinya? I didn't want to get emotional for the podcast about the post-fight. I've heard the post-fight is quite heart-wrenching.
Well, it's heart-wrenching before and it's heart-wrenching after. They wanted you to cry for this Marcello match, let me tell you.
They did. I've had 2 people that were like, yeah, man, I got teary-eyed. I was like, that's crazy.
Well, because Marcello almost starts crying when he's talking. You're like, oh, and he's such a innocent human.
He's like a nice guy. Marcello's like, in a sport of not nice guys, Marcello's a pretty nice guy.
Well, he's a nice guy until you watch him with his ukis and you watch him like literally like
old school.
Like, I mean, he manhandles some people, but he's a sweetheart.
I would love to see him versus Shinya Aoki. I don't really think it's competitive. Shinya's a bit bigger now, but I think you have to kind of warm him up against the older gentleman. I honestly think like it's not unreasonable. I think Shinya was I think this will be a rematch, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think that one of the years that Shinya was in ADCC, he got Lachlan Giles unlucky. and he got Marcello first round of his division and got subbed, and then he got Hodger first round of Absolute. Much like Lachlan got Cade Rotolo and then Yuri.
Yeah.
Back to back. You're just like, man, you have really bad luck. I think Shinya had that bad. So I think it's going to be a rematch. I think it would have been 80cc 2007 or 11. I think was the year that happened.
You should take notes so you can have all this stuff in your back pocket.
Yeah, I should. I should really what I like to do. I just like to memorize it. I like having it off rip. I just think it's just a neater skill. If I'm going to fill my brain with fun stuff, I just think, years that Shinya Aoki got really bad luck in 80cc draws.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's awesome to see Marcello back. Would love to see him versus I'd love to see Marcello against anyone Marcello wants to go against.
Yeah.
Like, man, he wants Buchecha, put him in there. Like, whoever he wants. Pick and choose your old. Like, he wants Lovato. Like, pick it. Anyone that Marcello wants.
Marcello gets.
He earned it, man.
Yeah.
He's back. It's fun. He looks as good as he looked.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not quite as quick and like as scrambly as he used to be. But Imanari is not really as scrambly as he used to be either. This is again,
but I think you have to.
I
think you kind of have to give him some master level competitors before you try to do like
throw him to Dante.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's still going to be a really hard.
It'd be really exciting, but yeah, I'd much rather see him versus guys like 13 years off,
and especially
guys like Shinya.
Yeah, to warm himself up and get used to it.
Yeah, there's some really fun matchups that one can put together, and I hope that they continue to treat Marcello well and give him matchups that that I want to see.
Yeah.
Again, I want to see him against anyone, but I think Shinya would be a fun match. Shinya has some really interesting stuff that he does. I think Marcello can probably beat Shinya Aoki, but again, Shinya's also a legend, and it'd be a cool rematch from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, anything else on the return
of
Marcelo Garcia?
It would be nice if they did it in like New York.
It'd be great if they came to like Baltimore,
because Baltimore would be better, but New York I'd be okay.
New York would be cool. Denver, I'll maybe fly out again for that. I'd be willing to see Troy. He had a match this weekend.
Yeah,
it was a match in suits.
Yeah, and then you saw the overtime they threw.
A fake gun in, and Troy won via gun. I was like, that's
he had
hilarious.
to find the gun and then point it at.
And it was in a pit, and it was like, it was a fun event to watch. Speaking of guys in Denver, because I think one is coming back to Denver in May. I think that was the schedule.
I mean, I could go to Denver.
I'd go to Denver. I went for Mikey. I went for Demetrius. I went for Ty.
I could make it a half work trip at the same time.
Yeah.
Hey.
There's that. So that is one championship. The return of Marcelo Garcia was phenomenal. Whole card was good, as always, for one. Let's talk a little bit about Karate Combat Pit Submission Series 11. Really just want to talk about there was three on this card. I personally really just want to talk about Fabricio Andre versus Sam Nagai.
Yep.
Sam Nagai takes this one. I love Miranda's note at the beginning of this. They both do weird superhero shit at the beginning. Yeah. Because again,
the way
every time, every
and
match.
the way you know how to explain this better than I do, but the way the cameras were filming, it did not look real. It looked like I was watching some kind of video game that they were just showing, because I literally
it's a refresh rate, and it's a bokeh, and it's a lens depth of field. There's a couple things that come into play that give you that specific.
And it
look.
looked like a freaking weird ass superhero video game. And I remember, I literally backed it up twice because I was like, nah, this isn't. I didn't just see that. And then I looked at it. No.
They both do the charge up at the beginning. Again, one of the things I like. Some people don't like it, but I do really enjoy when guys have a little flair.
Yeah,
you're a fighter out there doing your thing.
I mean, as long as you don't fuck yourself up doing it.
Yeah, we've seen that. Have guys stomp their foot and twist their ankle.
We saw Fabricio do it that one time. So as long as you don't see guys
wait, who did it? Somebody did it at CJI.
I don't know.
We've seen it in UFC. I think it was
I don't know.
T-City. Brian Ortega, I think, did it once. He you see him roll his ankle in the walkout, and then you realize he's broken his ankle, and you can see him realize that he's broken
was he the one that tripped over the No,
that was Tony Ferguson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a different MMA fighter. But regardless, I like the showmanship of Sam Nagai and Fabricio Andre because it goes from like, this is going to be a good match to they charge up and you're like, all right, man, I'm into this because these guys are about to go at it. And they did. Fabricio Andre, early in this match, I think in the first round, is inverted. So he's on his back and he's guard scooting towards Sam Nagai, he does the highlight classic.
He does like the donkey guard bounce at somebody when you bounce at him upside down with your legs in the air.
No, donkey guard is like when you're just ass up.
Well, I mean, it's inverted, but he's like bouncing at
I have other names for this guard too that I can't say on the podcast. But when I teach it, I describe it certain ways. But Fabricio Andre then rolls through, and it's one of the things that will come off of an inverted guard. Yeah, he rolls through and like he puts his foot on the hip, and then he spins over and he goes triangle. Yeah, on Sam Nagai, and you see Sam Nagai go, "Whoa, that was like kind of tight." He defends it. Overall,
but he goes triangle, then armbar, like belly down armbar.
Yeah, belly down armbar.
And then Sam Nagai throws his legs over, and then it's like he's trying to armbar him through his legs, and I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna go after a leg, and then somehow they get apart. Yeah. And I'm like, that was some crazy shit.
Again, it takes two guys to tango. Both of these guys were here, they were running, they were ready to go.
And then in the second round, we have Fabricio jump a guillotine on, or no, we see Nagai jump guillotine on Fabricio, and we see Fabricio just walk up the pit wall to get out of it. He literally just goes do and walks all the way up the pit wall until his head is no longer in the guillotine, and then just jumps in.
One of the things I love about the pit wall is things like that, because you just like, you look like, oh yeah, normally a guy can almost snap you down from there, or you have to back out, or you have to like pull out and just clear the hands. Yeah. But with the pit wall, you can kind of lean on the grip that they need for your neck, because they really can't walk any closer. They can't walk you up the pit wall, because you're both going to fall over, which is a strategy. But Nagai is essentially caught at the edge of where the wall begins to start. And then Fabricio, because he can kind of lean into Nagai with his neck, can walk up and then essentially walk out of the choke. And it was like, I watched this because you showed me the highlight again, and I went, I have no idea, as a guy that's a guillotine specialist, I have no idea how I would try to finish this guillotine.
And then the other problem is now both your arms are on his head as he walks up. So if he jumps...
You flying armbar then.
He flying armbar.
Which is funny because Daniel Slather is also on this. Last time we saw him on Pit Submission, that's what we saw him do essentially. Yeah. The Pit is definitely an unsolved problem. Yeah. Which is so funny to me that after all these years of grappling, like, again, even if something as simple as like a snap down guillotine where you have a guy standing, it's like suddenly with the Pit, it introduces this whole different element of like, okay, I actually can't hold on to this because you were going to walk me up, and now I go from having good leverage and purchase on your head and being over top of your head to suddenly your hips are above, your head is technically still below me, but your hips are above me, and you're now pushing into me. So I actually can't even snap down effectively to drop you off because I can't make that distance and leverage. It's just such a unique problem, and it's really opened up a whole like different dimension of a grappling space that I love that I was initially such a hater of it, and I've done a complete 180 where I'm like, I kind of love the Pit. It's super nifty as an analyst to talk about and think about just how it changes the dynamics of the basic sequences like this. It was fun.
And then round 3, you had the craziness of they were both standing, and Nagai goes after one of Andre's legs, and he jumps a crucifix, in which Nagai then picks him up in the air and slams him from like up in a crucifix
slam,
like over his head onto the,
it's like a fireman slam from the crucifix, but not really. But
somehow,
slam.
But somehow Andre like stays on his back. Like, it's just, there's so many weird, crazy exchanges in this match. But what you do see is you see Nagai keep on kind of keeping a higher pace, and you see Andre having little bursts of activity like what we talked about, but you also see him kind of start fading as like the second and third round go.
And I think you were talking, and we kind of watched the match again, and then you were talking about like what you thought, because it's 3 rounds.
Yeah.
You were talking about what you thought the deciding factor was for it, because the guy gets the decision here.
Yeah, round 1 was Andre, round 2 is Nagai, and then they go into the 3rd round. And there's also some confusion with the commentators on how this works. If then the coaches are only judging the entire match on that 3rd round because they've already won 1 each, like that is like a tiebreaker round and they're using only that match to score it, or if they're scoring the entire match. No one really knows the answer to that question either.
Yeah.
Because this match, you see...
Because usually in pit submission, they are 2 rounds.
Yeah.
But if you need to go to a 3rd round, they can go to a 3rd round.
Yes.
But that brings the question, like, okay, ADCC, when you go to overtime, you judge the whole match, including the overtime. Yeah. Other organizations only judge the overtime. So in this case, the 3rd round would be considered an overtime. You only judge the overtime. And so it's like, we still have some questions. Unfortunately, still have some questions when it comes to pit submission, exactly how they're scared. One of the matches early in the card where like we don't really know why it ended a certain way, and the commentators don't know. There's still a bit more of a gray area than I would like for a professional organization of like exactly what's the scoring criteria, how does it work, it's a little more gray than I would like. But this is an example of that, of like, okay, does the work that Fabrizio Rangel did at the beginning in the 1st round and the guy taking the 2nd round, that 3rd round, if we're judging the whole thing, I don't really think it changes the outcome in this match.
No, this match, not really.
But other matches it does, and it has, where we've been like very confused about who ends up winning the event.
It's always kind of, whenever you coach somebody in a tournament, you always kind of tell them at the end, the last like 15, 30 seconds of a match, look good for the last few seconds of your match. Just because most refs, or a lot of people, a lot of judges are not going to remember that entire round unless there's a reason to remember that entire round. Yeah. They're going to remember that little last part.
Like a guy like famously Michael Bisping, like his corner would call for I think the last minute, and then he would just like really turn on.
You
and it was like
turn
you have 4 minutes that are kind of like maybe he didn't win the round, and that last minute you have this big push, and I was like, oh well, I mean he was winning clearly at the end. You're like, okay. That will win you way more decisions and victories in combat sports than I think people want to admit, because if you watch a lot of matches like we do, and I really make an effort to not do it, like to zone out during a match. Like if I'm there, getting paid to be there to either commentate or to judge or to ref, whatever I'm doing, you pay attention the whole time. That is your job. That is you can't mentally take a vacation. Yeah. A lot of guys, that's not always the case, and they kind of can fade out, and so you have to go to a decision suddenly, depending on how closely your referee or your officiant was paying attention. They may only really remember that last big moment of the match and go, oh, that guy had that last big moment, and that can win. Unfortunately, win you more matches than maybe it should if you have a judge or a ref or an officiant that kind of zoned out during pieces of the match. But it is a great strategy, and like you said, whenever you coach athletes or fighters, you always go, hey man, at the end, make sure that you have a push at the end of a round, because that a lot of times is what you need to win.
It's what makes you win.
Yes.
But anyway, so the push at the end of the 3rd round is also probably one of the closer sequences to actually somebody tapping.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, in all honesty, and it's Nagai. He passes Fabrizio, and he gets the triangle from the back, and then kind of isolates the one arm up by his head and starts kind of going for whatever cranky arm shit you can do from that position.
Essentially, he starts going for like the tops, the Americana from the back, and he starts going for the straight armbar. He goes straight armbar, Americana, straight armbar, turns a straight armbar. Like he turns. He is very much looking for, and the guy's a good finisher. Yeah, we've talked about him for years as being like a really impressive finisher, and a guy that will consistently go for the finish. Fabrizio is doing a great job spinning down, turning, and then time expires. But time expires with Nagai. If you're not a world-class guy like Fabrizio, getting submitted. Like, the guy is actively looking for a late-stage submission. Fabrizio is like not as much working positional work. Yeah. He is working to escape getting armbarred or getting triangled. Like, so a very, very good look for Nagai at the end of that round. Like, clearly wins that round with that final sequence. And then you have the strength of the 2nd round. I think it's clearly here for Nagai, but it was a really fun match, and it's free on YouTube. You should watch it. There is a bit of a broadcast issue with the match towards the end. I think Nagai, you pulled up a highlight from Nagai.
Yeah, Nagai's highlight has the end of it. And there might be somewhere online on the Pit Submission Karate Combat page that has it. But the one that I was watching definitely had, like, it started a countdown to the main broadcast right as Nagai passes, and you're like, what the fuck? And then the match is over, and you're like, what, and you don't have any idea what happened.
Show me my jiu-jitsu again.
Yeah.
So, but again, match definitely worth your time this week. Fun. And Fabricio Andre and Sam Nagai are always really, really fun to watch. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Also on this card, we had Lance Palmer versus Richie Lewis for pit submission, and Richie Lewis takes that by unanimous decision. He's on top for the rounds. We also had Daniel Slather versus Asar Kazma. This was going to be Gilbert Burns, but Burns was injured.
Yeah.
I don't really know much about the extent of the injury for Burns, but again, he's getting older. You've got a lot of years of combat sports. These things can happen.
Kazma comes in. He's an MMA fighter. He's 19. He's from Russia. And he takes Slather down so many times. Like, it's takedown into the cage, takedown into the cage, takedown into the cage again. And he just keeps on doing it. And then it's like Slather tries something and it's, reshot, takedown into the cage. Yeah. But besides that, Ansar isn't trying to actually pass. It's like he's taking him down and holding him.
He's volume takedowns.
Yeah.
Kind of like what a lot of Khabib did. Like, volume take. You're going to get back up. Like Marab, you're going to get back up, but I'm going to take you down again. And it's a very effective strategy in MMA because it gives you that ring generalship. It gives you control of the fight. Even if you're not doing a lot with it, it puts you clearly in control of that fight. But because we're doing jiu-jitsu, Daniel Slather here is throwing on like guillotines and kind of working from his guard a little bit. He ends up taking the decision here.
You know what? I messed up in my brain. I messed up two things. Both of this match and the Nagai match, both have a guy that goes from standing to crucifix. And Ansar is the one who like freaking full out slams Slather off of his back.
Okay, so we flip that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nagai can't get out of it. And Fabricio grabs Nagai's back and has Nagai's back.
Yeah, he transitions that hook down. He pulls the hook down.
With Slather, like, Ansar picks him legitimately up and slams him off of his back, like over his head. Almost like you're doing a fireman's. Like you're gonna do a fireman's carry.
We both mixed.
And I just realized that how many times do you see that? And what's really weird is
not very frequent.
I have someone who sent this to me because he was like, "This is really cool, and you do this. Why don't you do this more?" And he sent me this exact move before this shit happened.
That's really funny.
So this must be like some kind of new thing that's floating around some of the rooms or something right now. Or somebody saw it online and was like, we're going to do this.
It's like, very famously, Aljamain Sterling hits a Sulubev stretch. Yeah. And then later, Magomed Sharipov hits it.
Guess what I mean?
In the same car.
I wonder, I wonder if it's
hilarious.
just like somebody seeing it and somebody else is like, I wonder if I can do that,
Like at that point, there'd been like, I think one or two. There'd been like one in the UFC to that point. Yeah. And then that night, there were two of them. Like, that's crazy. So Daniel Slather wins a split decision here. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the commentators are even kind of confused. And we've had this on Pit Submission before, where it's like, I don't really know what the criteria is for Pit Submission.
Because if you go like MMA scoring, then Ansar wins because he gets all the takedowns. He has all the control. He almost has control, most of the time.
3 rounds.
But you have Slather attacking, and you have him getting guillotines, which aren't really the most amazing guillotines.
But you're attacking, you're working for something. Yeah. But we had the opposite happen when we talked about this issue last time, where it was like you had the guy going for stuff, and you had the top position player win the matchup. Yeah. Like it's confusing because we don't really know what the decision criteria is for Pit Submission, and it is inconsistent. Like this match and the other match a couple weeks ago we talked about that was confusing. It's inconsistent. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. I would love to see more consistency here because, again, Pit Submission has fun matches.
Or at least have some kind of posting where they explain. Like, have somebody explain why. You know what I mean?
I would love to see that. I don't think we're going to see that.
Well, but we do have time between these matches and the striking matches. Like, if you could have somebody explain why, one of the commentators, have one of them have an earpiece and somebody feeds them why such and so won. Just because it's then hard to coach somebody going into it on what I mean. I guess
your criteria is.
I guess what the answer to that is well, you have to sub them. You know, like, but.
Yeah, that's the goal of the entire sport, but that's not always going to happen.
But yeah, when you're equally matched, that becomes more of a problem, and you need to know the criteria in order to win.
Mm-hmm. So again, it was fun. They were fun matches. I would love a little bit more clarity for exactly what the judging criteria is for some of these matches. But again, they're putting on fun matches. Guys are getting paid. They're continuing to run them. So yeah. I do like that. I do appreciate that.
And I want to go to one of these days.
They look really fun
because they're really
really cool.
They're relatively inexpensive. They're not. Yeah. They're not pricey.
They look like fun showcase cards.
Yeah.
So let's move on. We're going to do a really quick recap of IBJJF European Finals. The entire finals event is about a 5-hour broadcast. They're getting long. We've been covering IBJJF for years and years. From the broadcast side, I really do appreciate that they finally got the whole names on the screen. It's great, but the coverage from Flow is pretty poor this year as far as, like, we're pulling our results from BJJ Heroes because Flow only has, like, the IBJJF listing. They don't have any match links. They have nothing parted out. It's just, it's poor. And I really wish that it was better because it's a premium service.
The lower belts, they didn't parse out their matches at all.
Yeah.
Or they hadn't, because I went looking
They've done some of them now.
Yeah. Because I was looking for matches and I couldn't find people, and I was like, I know they were there.
Man, I'm just continually disappointed with the level of service provided by Flow for these major events and how much of a pain in the ass it is for us to do, like, our coverage, because the content rights holder does a poor job aggregating the information. We have to go through, like, BJJ Heroes and Jits Magazine. It's like, hey man, they have a results page on their website. Update it for Europeans. Hey man, add match links. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, it's not an inexpensive service. That's why, again, a bunch of our friends have dropped it because it's just like, yeah man, it's really hard to follow and watch, and I don't watch a lot of the content. It's not produced very well. I just wish that they would, again, they finally have names on the screen that make sense, that are full names. But man, it's 2025, and we just got that. It's like production is moving at a glacial pace. I do say that
at least this one, they didn't give us a 20-minute. We give you your medal ceremony between each match.
That was nice, but it still was. The finals for Europeans for adults was 5 hours.
Yeah.
Dude, it's long. And then they ran commercials during it when I'm paying for a premium service. Like, that irks me and pisses me off. It's like, hey guys, I'm already paying you a pretty decent amount for this service.
Pit Submission on YouTube did the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's
free.
And it was stupid YouTube commercials, but still.
I pay for YouTube, so I don't see the commercials on YouTube. But it's like, I'm
not paying for YouTube.
I pay for YouTube. It's less than Flow a month.
Okay.
And I watch way more YouTube. But beside the argument there, let's talk about the finals here. We're going to run through them really quickly. Talk about some of the highlights. We have the Rooster Weight final. Miranda, you stop me and interject where you want a piece here. We have pieces from each match, but again, these European recaps can get really, really long sometimes, and ideally this year I don't want Euros to be a 2.5-hour show. Yuri Hernandez.
But you also don't. You normally have Zach for this show.
Yeah, usually this is the European show for Zach, and Zach and I will chit chat for 2.5 hours usually on Europeans. We have Yuri Hendricks defeating Jalen Franciere via 2 points. This one was a great match back and forth. Jalen has a ton of sub attempts throughout the entire match. He's up like 5 or 6 ads.
Yeah.
And then with 32 seconds left or something like that, he gets awarded 2 points because he comes up to the back on an ankle lock but never makes top position fully. They give him the 2 points on the scoreboard, at least on the scoreboard that we can see.
Almost like a sweep. They give him sweep points, but then they take sweep points away.
But they take sweep points away after he's on this ankle lock. He has points. He's up 3 ads, essentially, because the other guy has 2 ads. And then with 12 seconds left, they take his points away. So he goes from winning the match on points and ads now to then losing the match on ads. And it's like, cool, man, in the last 30 seconds of the match, you essentially made a scoring error.
Yeah.
And it looked like that Jalen was holding onto the ankle lock because, hey, man, you hold that on ankle lock.
Well,
you win on points.
He held onto it, and then he transitioned to like that back knee bar.
Really beautiful transition to the knee bar.
It was kind of like he was like, oh, I'm gonna fuck with this knee bar now because he was was ahead on points, so
You're
he didn't have to do anything.
there.
And then the craziest is then in the last 10 seconds, he attempts to take the guy down and jump his back to make the points up. But
that was just super frustrating at a major in 2025 that we're still having finals that are having like.
But I do have to say they are also rooster weights, so they don't stop moving.
Yeah.
So it is a very active match to be watching.
I get it, and again, I think that he shouldn't have scored the points anyway.
Yeah.
But having the points on the board and then taking them away.
Yeah.
In the last 30 seconds, when it's like he is absolutely, his coach is absolutely going to modify his strategy.
I mean, I've done this myself, so I understand.
It's frustrating, but again, Yuri takes it on points. Clean points victory there. But man, Jalen, I feel like we're going to see more from him because he was gunning for it the entire match.
He's a new black belt too.
Yeah. So anything else on that?
Nope.
On the light featherweight finals, we had Diogo Reis defeating Shiorya Ishiguro via advantages. Again, no points for either guy. Light featherweight, Diogo looks good on top, good heavy pressure, but no score either way. He's definitely the more active guy, and I think that's what leads him to the decision here. Featherweights, we have Diego Oliveira defeated Kennedy Masayao 2-0. Kennedy has a really close match with Cole Abate early that I haven't had a chance to see yet.
I have not either.
But I'm very excited because we were curious. We basically said whoever won that match in their semifinals was going to be the guy that went against Diogo. You picked Diogo last week. Very reasonable to pick him.
Yep.
He takes it over Kennedy 2-0. Again, fun match, really good back and forth for both guys. Looked like world champion, world-class level jiu-jitsu here. On to the men's lightweight, we have Leonardo Suzo defeating Lucas Presterio via choke. What choke was this? Modified zipper?
I think so.
This is where I would love Flo to have... Again, Flo results in the first place. These are from BJJ Heroes that we've pulled to go through because Euros is so long and it's hard. The turnaround time for the show is about 12 hours. It's very hard to get it together in that time. I forget what choke it was, but that's men's lightweight. On the middleweight final, let's talk about Tainan Daupra. He defeats Andy Murasaki via 2 points with a very clearly broken hand.
Yes.
Very clear. So we saw an x-ray. I don't know if that's an x-ray of his hand or a generic x-ray.
I don't know.
We don't know.
It was the Dr. Kick-Ass guy that goes through injuries on people all the time.
Yeah. So the injury, the picture that was posted, it was like a boxer's fracture.
Yeah.
Based on how Tainan's hands wrapped up, we have no idea. We don't know if that's actually his x-ray. It's a broken metacarpal.
I didn't see any x-rays of his that I could find anywhere.
I would be surprised from that camp if we ever saw an x-ray.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But his hand is clearly broken.
Yeah.
In some way. It could be a tendon, it could be something. It looks like a broken bone because it's wrapped up and he's not using it any more than you watch some of his earlier matches in his division. He is not using it
sort of
any more than he has to.
But not really.
Not like he usually does.
No.
He's usually a pretty heavy gripper and he will use both hands, very frequently. He's using this one, but he's usually only the two fingers, the ring finger and the middle finger there to grab. You're not seeing full hand grips for most of the gripping he's doing. I'm not a doctor.
And he's also changed his game. Like he's not playing the same exact game that he normally plays because he doesn't have that hand to kind of stabilize him.
He scores a sweep here. Basically, he scores a 50-50 tech-up sweep on Andy Murasaki for 2 points. He's unable to pass Murasaki's guard, and then they kind of go out of bounds. They reset. Eventually, they reset, and they stand for 3 seconds.
He had said that when he broke his hand, he went into judo, which I was like, that sounds like the complete opposite of what I would do.
Hey, man.
If I broke my hand, I would be like,
let's go to the even heavier gripping sport with notorious hand injuries.
Yeah, for whatever reason, and I don't know, maybe he went into like a specific kind of judo where like...
Yeah, the kind of judo where you don't use grips for every move.
I read his thing, and he was like, I don't have a hand, so I decided to start doing judo. And I was like, dude, that's how I fuck up my hands.
Hey, I decided to start to take an ice bath for a couple weeks and heal my body up. But it was, again, I wish he wouldn't have competed like this, but it is still wildly impressive that he was still able to win a European championship at adult black belt with a broken hand. And it's clearly not halfway functional hand.
And it wasn't like he had a division of jokers.
Yeah, he's a middleweight.
You know what I mean? No, but I mean,
it's
it's not like you go. It's not like he did an open. He
didn't do
some.
He didn't do the insert tiny town that will offend here. Open. He went to the European Championships and did it here. Again, Murasaki looked good. Tynan also looked good, but it was definitely a much slower pace than we have seen from Tynan previously. Again, still able to get it done. I hope he pulls out of the Rene Souza match and heals himself, because I want to see Tynan compete for many years to come, and I do not want to see this become that one of those dumb recurring athlete injuries that, like, hey man, 3 years later, well, his hand's still fucked up. It's like, why? Well, because he didn't heal it for a year, and now Keenan can't close his hands. You're like, hey, because you didn't heal his injuries that he had to his hands. Your hands are really important for jiu-jitsu, especially if you're a gi heavy kind of player like Tynan is, moving over to no-gi. But man, just heal your hands, man. You're a world-class athlete. You've won the titles. Yeah, you're not going to Grand Slam this year. Just take some time off, man. I want to see him back in full force and not deal with this career-long injury because he's not healing his hand up. So that's my piece there.
Yep.
Middleweight final.
Medium heavyweight.
Oh yeah, medium heavyweight. I'm looking so bright a light here.
Yeah, medium heavyweight. We have twin brothers, Davi and Mateus Vittora. I don't know.
Vittoracci.
Yeah, Vittoracci.
What I love, we've said it for years, siblings and brothers is the best base for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
We have
twins.
It's so many of them that can't be a coincidence. Like the Rotolo brothers. We have Tammy and Mikey Musumeci.
And everybody that, if you train.
The Muniz brothers.
If you train, at least.
The Meow brothers.
One, if not two, groups of siblings that compete and that train locally, that beat the living crap out of each other, that you're like, I wish I had
the Corbett brothers.
Yeah.
Let's see who else. The Ryan brothers.
Yeah.
They're
a little bit different because they're different.
But they're still phenomenal competitors.
Yeah.
Like being a brother, the Nicky Rod and J Rod, pick and choose, and also twins and brothers. Like, man, it is one of the best bases for jiu-jitsu in the world. So they close out. Again, I wish you do what Ty and K did, fight for it. But I've beat this dead horse for IBJJF closeouts for years and years and years. I don't like to see it. I think it diminishes the accomplishment of both athletes. I would love for those guys to fight for it, but.
Maybe Mama doesn't want them to do that.
Ty and Cade could do it. Everyone could do it now.
Yeah,
show me your.
They look like they would just beat the shit out of you.
Because they do. Because we've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen them fighting in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Like, they're about it. And I appreciate that they are willing to fight for it. Because you're in a title fight. But regardless, they close out. Good for them. It's awesome to see two brothers in the finals there. Heavyweight, we have my guy, Adam Wardzinski, defeating Leonardo Ferreira via choke from the back. We try not to be super biased on this show, but it is our show, so a little bit biased.
We do like Adam.
I like Adam Wardzinski. I like his game. It's super neat. It's super nifty. He has refined it over the years, and again, like his Worlds run, like his Crown run, he is on right now.
His sweeps are so good because they're the stupidest little sweeps. But they work so well.
His timing and his distance management and his control is just so good, where it's like, it looks effortless. It looks like, and then he teeters you over, and then you're like, yep, you're going to stop it. And then you just you go over.
Yeah.
And then you have Adam Wardzinski on top of you, banging a knee cut through your chest. And you're like, okay, good luck with this large Polish metalhead on top of you with phenomenal technique. He is
large because I remember seeing him somewhere at one of the IBJJFs. He appeared beside me at one point, and I remember looking up at him and seeing his,
his long flowing hair
and being like, Jesus, he's a big man.
Yeah. He's a big dude. Adam Wardzinski looks phenomenal here. He sweeps. He gets on top. He throws a knee cut. He goes to the mount. And then he cooks Leonardo Ferreira for a minute here.
Yeah.
And you see him, again, it looks exactly like it looked against Felipe Andrew, where it was just like, cool, man, I get to the top. I cook you a little bit. I score my points. I just rack up points.
Yeah.
And then eventually you go, I have to get Adam Wardzinski off of my chest. You overcorrect on the bridge. He takes your back, and he gets the choke.
Yeah. And he did the zipper choke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, Adam Wardzinski looks phenomenal. There is a non-zero chance that he Grand Slams this year.
Yep.
And is the first European to ever Grand Slam. I don't think he Grand Slammed last year.
No, he didn't.
But he won Worlds. He was the first European to win Worlds. There is a possibility that he could be that guy.
Well, especially with Felipe Andrew not there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, on suspension. Yeah, man, Adam Brzezinski could. I mean, even with Felipe Andrew there,
even
he's
with
now
him
kind of
there.
figured
Yeah.
out how to deal with Felipe Andrew and like with a level of consistency now. It's really interesting, man. Adam Brzezinski looked really good, and I'm excited to see him, as the returning European champion now, moving to the rest of the season. Super heavyweight, we had a weird match. Winston Torres.
Oh, it's Pedro Lucas.
But
But for whatever reason, they wrote Winston Torres' name twice.
Defeated Winston Torres. Winston Torres gave up.
No, Pedro Lucas gave up.
Pedro Lucas.
I think
Did we switch this?
No, it says the same name twice.
Yeah, I see that.
It's because when they did it, but I'm almost positive it's Pedro Lucas. Pedro Lucas was on the bottom because that's Pedro Lucas's Bum Bum, right?
Yeah, I thought Winston Torres was the.
No, Bum Bum was on the bottom, and he just was like, I'm over, and just like gave up.
Okay, I don't want to misrepresent. It was weird. He looks like, again, I've mixed up the names here. The gentleman on the bottom of this match seems to get tired.
Winston Torres is a super heavy European champion.
Okay, so Pedro Lucas
is on the bottom and
gives up here.
He just kind of gives up.
And then he gets mounted, and then what I'm again, I don't want to speak. I hope he's not injured. I hope that it's an injury.
It may be like a rib or something like that.
That's what I hope.
You know what I mean?
But it looked like that he got tired, he gave up, he got mounted, knew he was not going to be able to defend at whatever, and just decided to tap before getting choked.
Yeah.
It was weird.
It could also be like his arm is also like really high over his head. And I know I have been struggling with one of my shoulders being super jacked lately.
Yeah.
And one of my arms will not go. Like, it's very painful to go over my head. So I could see it being like, maybe it's like a shoulder injury.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt here.
Or something like that.
It didn't look like it. And then on the podium, he was up and it was weird. I don't have much more to say about that. I hope we don't see this continue to happen. Reminded me of kind of Herbert Santos a little bit when he kind of would give up in some matches. I hope that's not the case, but it was odd because even Flo has even BJ Heroes has exhaustion ?
Yeah.
It was a very odd finish to a finals match at this level. Ultra heavyweight, we had Luis Cantinera defeating Higo Arbito via Armin Ezekiel choke.
That doesn't happen very often, does it?
Does not happen very often. Right, but again, an ultra heavyweight, sometimes like if you're gonna see it, you're gonna see it from like a really quick, fast guy, or a big guy just goes today at this time and just like levers that choke into it. Again, really neat finish. Armin Ezekiel choke. Not very common.
No,
but
not very common.
It does work if you have the size to press against it, man. Tap is a tap, as we say in the room. So, really neat finish, unusual finish there. On to the open. Anything else on that ultra heavyweight? On to the open weight here for the men. Oh, wait, this one. We had double DQ due to stalling. Kind of embarrassing. Change your game, guys. We've seen it before. I always think it's kind of embarrassing that guys are willing to play the rules to that extent.
They brought the weird part about it is then they brought the two guys that had just went against each other, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they already go against each other for third place?
No, because there's no third place. They're opposite sides.
Oh, okay. So they just brought them out and were like, "Hey, you guys get to compete now."
And then it's weird. Final result number 2: Luis Cantera defeats Leonardo Ferreira via 2 points. Weird finals match. Sorry, weird first finals match. Second finals match is fine. It's a very
when I think about it, we also
weight.
had the last time we did a master, or not a master. Last time we did a one of these
open weight.
No, the last time we did one of these really big tournaments, I think it was Nogi Worlds. Yeah, we had the ladies match. That was a double D. No, that was a single DQ. That was a stalling DQ. I was trying to think the last time we had a double DQ. We haven't had a double DQ in a long time.
I remember in a major like Levi Jones Leary was the last time at a World. So I remember a high profile.
They
double
kept
DQ.
on pulling.
They kept on pulling, and it didn't come up for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
It's weird. But again, Luis Cantanetta takes it.
They're also open weight males, so yeah.
Moving on to the women, we have roosterweight female Thales Loreno defeats Yasmin Castro via straight ankle lock. pretty quick too, kind of bangs it down and just sort of bellies down and bases out and was like, that's a really tight ankle lock, and that's it. Unfortunately, in her earlier match, Yasmin had an opponent DQ'd for reaping. Again, I wish that IBJJF would go, hey man, it's fine, but it happens.
Yeah.
Light featherweight female final, we had Maisa Bastos. We called it last week.
Yep.
Choke from the back. She looked really good. It was like a modified bow and arrow. Maisa Bastos was up really, really high on the shoulder. It was a Maisa Bastos match. Her previous match was also a choke from the back. She gets down. She gets under you. She passes.
Yeah.
She goes to the back. She chokes. That is every Maisa Bastos match in the gi for the last couple of years, for the most part.
Yep.
I wish I kind of had more to talk about Maisa Bastos.
I mean, her bolos are pretty slick.
Phenomenal. I mean, her game is great, but it's just so consistently like, yep, this is her game, and she can execute it on pretty much anyone at her weight class that stands in front of her.
Yeah.
Consistently. And we've talked about it for years and years and years. Like, that's what it looks like. That's what she does.
But then you see her go into no-gi, and you see they have the same problem.
Yeah.
You know, she plays a little bit more top heavy in no-gi, but still a very similar game all around.
So moving on to the featherweight final, we have Larissa Campos defeating Victoria Assis via another choke from the back. Again, that was a little bit of a theme here for the lower weight classes for the women, which is great. Again, the ladies usually in the Europeans have a pretty high submission rate in the finals, which I really, really do like. Something about this tournament specifically typically leads to a pretty high percentage of choke finishes. So she takes that via, I think it was a bow and arrow as well. Usually it's a bow and arrow. Next one, the lightweight female match. We have Jaina Maya defeating Stefan Caroline. I can never get her last name. Faure. Faure. Faure.
Yeah.
Via points, 6-2. Nice back and forth match with Jaina taking that. Middleweight final, we have Vanessa Griffith defeating Victoria Nogueira via decision. Pretty close match. I think Vanessa
is more active.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I want to have more kind of analysis to the match, but really just is more active, is doing more.
She, from her, almost her full guard, almost a lot of it, trying to attack, and just Victoria not having the ability to really pass or get anything off.
Yeah. So I was very curious if they were going to give it to her on the decision.
Yeah.
And they do. I was like, oh, sweet. She won a decision. So Vanessa Griffin is now the champion, European champion, which is really cool. She's, again, local to us. So that's always cool to see. Medium heavyweight women, we have Ingrid Alves defeating Ariela Laverne via armbar. Just side control armbar.
Yeah.
Just bangs it out and just kicks out and just yanks. Ariela tries to come up and stack, but Ingrid does a great job of grabbing the leg, pushing her over, and just like really a textbook, like not cross-side, same side armbar, preventing the stack. This is always what I tell like my students to do when they're in the gi. It's like, hey man, when they go to stack you there, push with your hip down to flatten them out while you grab their inside leg and pull.
Yeah.
And this is why preferentially when I teach people to like swing for the arm bar, I always teach them to use that top arm to grab down in the gi so you can grab the pants.
Yeah.
I typically prefer to switch arms to go up high because I want to have the race for belly down.
Yeah.
But a better technique, obviously, because Ingrid Alves is world class, is to do it this way and like hold the pants, hold the arm, and then frame way at the head to stop the stack. It really is textbook for her finishing this armbar.
Yep.
Onto the heavyweight final, we have Melissa Couto defeating Isildora Cristina via decision. On the super heavyweight final, we have Gabi Pasana defeating Yara Soares via straight ankle lock. I think in the open weight, it was a decision. Oh no, it was a back and forth. I think they've copied these results twice for open weight and for super heavyweight.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I remember seeing the match. I think Pasana, I thought she smother choked her, but that might have been an earlier.
No, the smother was in No-Gi Worlds, I think.
No, she had another one today.
Oh, she did?
Yeah. I thought it was Yara Soares, but it might have been another lady. It might have.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah, one of these results here from BJJ Heroes is wrong. We talked about it like when we previewed it. We've talked about it last Europeans for Gabi. She kind of has Yara Soares. It's usually her and Yara Soares. I think the last time Yara Soares beat her was like 2022 or 2023.
Yeah.
She has figured out how to beat Yara Suarez. There were some close matches here with really Gabby working primarily from the guard. It was very, very close, but either the open... I get the two matches mixed up because Flo has not parted them out yet. They parted out one and put it in its own article, and I forget which one that was. I think that was the open weight match. Not a lot of activity. I was surprised almost that there weren't more stalling calls, considering that they gave a double DQ earlier in the open weight. I almost thought that match had a similar amount of action to this match. But Pisano was at least in the guard, but not doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so it's IBJJF. There is a level of inconsistency sometimes in their scoring and their decision making that I still don't really love. But, what can you do? Gabby takes both of them, like we kind of thought she was, beating Yara Suarez in both divisions, like she usually does. I don't have much more to say about it. That was Europeans. A lot of fun matches. A lot of stuff, honestly, really interesting happening in the earlier rounds of the tournament, more so than some of the finals matches. Some great finishes in the finals, but the storylines, I think, a lot of earlier matches were a bit more interesting than some of the finals matches.
Yeah.
So...
There's all kinds of stuff going on, but it was fun. It was definitely a fun, not card, but tournament.
Weekend of events.
Weekend of events.
Yeah, week of events, really, because we watched some of the lower belts as well in there as well. Let's move into the preview section really quickly. Let's preview Helena Crevar versus Tiara Lewis. Helena Crevar is the current champion for Fight to Win for a brown belt no-gi. No, this is no-gi, right? Is this gi or no-gi?
No-gi. I don't think Tiara does gi.
Okay.
She might do gi. I don't know. From what I remember, and like I said, I met her for a couple days. She stayed at the same house as me when we were in LA. She's going to want to play top. She's going to want to pass from the top. Mm-hmm. She's one of those heavy pressure, top, will try to take your back kind of people. And Helena
kind of wants that exact fight.
She kind of wants you to do that to her.
And so I think that triangles are a possibility here. Leg locks are a possibility here. But really in the Fight to Win rule set, they both kind of bring an interesting kind of wrinkle here because Tiara's going to be pretty aggressive coming forward. Yeah. But Helena is going to be aggressive from the bottom. But we have seen her sometimes struggle to finish. Yeah. If you're really, really tough, sometimes Helena can get stuff going, but she's going to rely on the decision there to win. This, I think, we've seen Crevar consistently making improvements and stepping up and stepping up and stepping up.
Tiara is going to have some size and weight on her.
Yeah.
So I
forget what weight class
she definitely needs to. From when I did Karjitsu, I think we were cutting to 160 because I think I didn't even have to cut, and she was coming down to 160. So I'm going to say that it's going to be a heavier weight class than Crevar is used to, and Crevar has had some problems in the past.
Open weight title.
Yeah.
So Crevar made a Fight to Win made a post, Helena made a post, basically that Tiara is going to be 180.
Yeah,
and
which
so looks
is
like
possible.
Crevar's 150. Walk around.
Tiara does weight training with
Hunter.
No, she trains with Hunter, but she does weight training with the girlfriend of Bordoni. She competes.
Oh, okay.
You know who I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about. I can't place
She's
her.
in the Dallas area, or
Wife,
I think she's in the.
Right?
Is it wife?
I think they're married.
She competes also.
Uh-huh.
And big, strong powerlifter chick. Yep. But she does weight training with her. So, I mean, she's a solid 180.
Yeah.
And she has some size to her.
So that'll be interesting again to see Helena. Helena's typically...
I mean, she towered over. She was taller than me. I mean, significant.
Again, it's a fun one. I really enjoy watching the progression of Helena's career. Again, that silver medal ADCC makes it really hard to pick against you. But again, open weight gets kind of funny, especially when you have someone bigger, stronger by 30 pounds.
Yeah.
I am very interested in this matchup. I will be very excited to cover it next week on the show when we're previewing who's number one and Gabriel Souza versus Gianni Grippo. But I'm going to go Crevar here. But I could see it being close. I could also see Crevar coming out the back and heel hook.
Yeah.
Or triangle, because those are really the two things that Crevar wants to do, but with a bigger person. And also the guys at Hunter's Gym Hunter's a pretty good leg locker himself. Yeah. It would be surprising for her to not have pretty good leg lock defense.
And if she comes out with the same kind of game plan that
Nia had,
you can kind of push her down a little bit more and kind of manhandle her a little bit.
Nia Blackman, when we saw her versus Crevar, is a pretty comparably sized to Crevar. Like Tiara is gonna have 30 pounds on Crevar. I am very curious how much of a factor that's gonna play. Again, we've seen Crevar competing in the women's weight classes as a child, but has been not usually on the smaller side of those matchups a lot of times. This will answer a lot of questions about where Crevar's game is going to progress long term. Yes. And I'm super excited for it. Again, I really enjoy watching her. It'll be fun to see her take on Tiara because Tiara has a really interesting set of attributes that we haven't seen Crevar up against yet, and it'll be exciting. So, any more on that? Do you have a pick as well?
Nope. We're just gonna see what happens.
Awesome. So I think that's all we got. Next week we're gonna talk about who's number one in that, and then also Fight Night for one championship. Yep. You got anything fun going on this weekend?
No. Last weekend, I went to bare knuckle boxing. That was fun.
Nice.
Saw Eddie Alvarez get his jaw broken in half.
Oh, I'm sad now.
Yeah.
I like Eddie Alvarez.
I'm trying to think what else.
I worked on the podcast studio all weekend. Yeah. We're installations up. The first layers are done. Sauna pan's getting up.
We're
getting there.
Didn't I go to the night jiu-jitsu, the guys in...
That was 2 weeks ago, I think.
That was 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was the 18th.
I went to some weird jiu-jitsu events this year so far, and it's been a brand new year.
We're doing commentary for our Copo Elite coming up as well.
Yes, we are.
That'll be in 2 weeks as well. So that'll be... All right, is that next week?
No, it's a couple weeks because Friday is I have to go to an alumni wrestling match at Elkton High School.
Oh, fun. Fun for that.
Fun. All kinds of grappling events going on. Sweet. All over the place.
So it should be a lot of fun. I got nothing else. Again, other than working on the studio. Hopefully it's done in the next couple of weeks. Fingers crossed. But anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Miranda.
And we have the Grappling Reruns, and that what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.